You're listening to the Tuesday Review live on 98.9 Northwest FM. I'm Nathan, as always, joined by James. How you going, James?
Not bad.
And joined by Callum. How you going, Callum?
Yeah, not bad.
And very special guest, Mr. Peg, Jack Squarepeg. How you going, Jack?
I'm very well. You can't see it, but I'm wearing sunglasses in the studio because the planet never sets on Planet Cool.
That's it.
The sun knows it. Yeah.
So we met Jack at PAX. He was our
I'm
game
going to take them
master.
off now. The gag is done.
No, you can keep him on.
The gag never ends.
The gag only ends when it's no longer...
That's it. You got
He's
to
our-
You gotta push
I'm going to
it.
have commitment.
Yeah.
That's it. You
He's
got to
our-
push through it, and then it becomes funny again later.
Is our star power not bright enough that you have to keep them on?
Look, you can dim the light a bit. Yeah. No.
So we met you at PAX. You were our game master for Rivers of
That's
London.
true. For Rivers of London, yes.
How was your PAX experience? Did you recover okay afterwards?
So after I saw you guys, for people who have no idea what these words mean, PAX is the gaming convention, probably the biggest one in Australia, and I was running games for Chaosium, who are a company that have been around since 1978, and they are most famous, I think, at this point for Call of Cthulhu. So I work for them during those events, and I get to kind of advertise my services as a pro GM at the same time, so it's mutually beneficial. I was running Rivers of London, which is a new game for them, which is British metropolitan bureaucracy meets supernatural stuff. But yes, to answer your question, after that I was at the tables, and for context, I think you guys knew this, but for the audience, I was there every day from 10 till 7 p.m. running games. And it was completely full each time because I was there were two GMs that were going to run that particular new game. It came out in 2022. That particular new game, everyone wanted to play, so it was full 6-player tables every time. So it wasn't like I was like, oh well, no one's here, I guess I'll go.
We got lucky for listeners who are aware. Sometimes we abuse our media credentials.
Maybe
and
a little.
We get in the extra hour early on the Friday, and we go straight to tabletop and be like, book us in, please.
I would absolutely
before
do that
100,000 people rock up.
I would absolutely do that if I abuse your power. Then what's it for?
So we luckily managed to see Rivers of London.
because tabletop always gets booked out so quickly.
But
Learned
that.
that the hard way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But how is just the general experience of I guess keeping your mind
In that place.
fresh or creative doing it over 3 whole days?
Well, I'll answer that question in a second, but the story isn't done. So after I ran the game for you guys, in the interim, I think by the time we did that first interview together, I'd been offered to do the panel. Well, how the panel went was I ended up like, okay, I'll take this seriously. I'll call a cab because Ubers were really expensive. I didn't know why. Why is it $50? Ever heard of the Melbourne Marathon? Well, apparently this cabbie did not, and he got me completely gridlocked, and so uselessly gridlocked that I could and did walk home. That's how far he got in 40 minutes. I got in my car, drove to a garage, then took an Uber from there to the convention and made it for the last 20 minutes of the panel. So that was a bit of a disaster. But apparently I was still funny, and that was recorded, so stay tuned. It'll be. I don't know how I was coherent about anything. It was mostly just blind rage and trying to act cordial, just like, hello everyone, hello audience.
You made an entrance, probably.
Oh yeah.
Probably more memorable.
Should have gotten some confetti guns. Like, I'm here now. But how do I remain fresh? The answer is practice. I've done this for a number of years. And the other is I don't consider it, well, the first draft of that answer was going to be, I don't consider it to be a job. It is a job, and people who do that kind of work should be paid, which is why I'm paid and other people are paid. But though it is taxing and requires energy, it is still an enjoyable process. I suppose if you talk to someone who really loves their work, they might be buggered, but they're not depressed. There's a difference.
That's fair. If you enjoy your work, then
You don't work a day in
you
your
don't
life.
work a day in your life.
Yeah.
We work
you
every
do,
day.
You do.
I mean,
there's certainly work involved, but it doesn't feel taxing.
I guess it also depends on the group, right?
Right.
So
That's a huge point. I was very lucky that everyone was into my style of role play. So role playing games in general, they're very different depending on the GM that you get. And I'm very theatrical. I enjoy putting you as best I can into that space. In this case, you're interviewing a guy who's seen a mummy in a London underground. That's like quite a complex and difficult thing. And we could have skipped past that bit where you're interviewing that guy, but instead I really tried to make that a feature rather than something to breeze past. And I think each time it took about 10 minutes. So the role playing
I think
was really
that's
good.
the best style of dungeon master or gamekeeper, whatever word. Because like I
Insert
feel like
term.
it's I was thinking about this the other day actually.
Yeah.
Because like there was a thread I saw on Twitter. I still use Twitter. Sorry, everyone.
You used to? I mean, most people used to. Who cares?
No, he still does. That's the problem.
Right.
We're trying to get him
that's
off
a whole
it.
other conversation.
Yeah.
I was talking about like every now and again there'll be a study that comes out that says about adults need to play, in quotation marks, play.
True. Yeah.
And for a lot of people that's video games, but I don't think video games scratches that creative itch that we all have as human beings. Because like I was thinking about this the other day when I was reading this thread about how people who get into D&D and tabletop when they're kids, they have this really world-changing experience where they fully embrace the role-playing, the creativity, the magic of it. But then when you approach it as an adult, if you don't have that background, it's kind of this awkward thing where I guess you have to reignite that little imagination spark, for lack of better phrasing. Because like if you get adults who've never done it before, and this is something that you would know a lot about, how hard is it to get them to not only engage with like the creative nature of role-playing, but to try and like negotiate with each other in that rather than make it all about themselves? Because when you're kids, it's easy to learn the sharing nature of it.
Well, first I want to be clear, at least on my own opinions. I think video games are perfectly serviceable. You are right in that they are different, but I think that gaming in that space can be positive just as much. I don't think that was your point, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, so there's like,
stretching a different muscle, like
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I want to
I
separate.
knew what you meant.
I
but
want to
wanted
separate something like
clarify my own
Roblox,
point of
for
view.
example, or
Sure.
like where it has like there's so many different styles of play in that space, rather than like a COD or a FIFA, which is just kind of like the one thing.
Well, that's a separate thing,
That's
but
different,
I'll get there. But the question was, remind me.
Just the differences between how adults and children
How do I
approach
get
it.
adults there?
Yeah, especially if they don't have a background in it. Like, how do you find their ability to open up and to kind of really honestly negotiate with that as a creative force?
This isn't universal. Nothing 100% works. But what I have found is I do it in two different ways. The first is I am... If I think they're going to have difficulty, I will put it out there in such a way that the negative stuff is sort of out there, which is to say, this is to do with my other work. I do work with the Fit to Drive Foundation, which is a non-profit, and it's similar. And it can deal with some heavy topics and things like that, but it involves role play in a similar way where you teach young people about safe driving, and it uses role play in that way. And so what I say in that context, and I do this occasionally with Pro GM stuff as well, I'll say, this is going to be awful. You're going to have a terrible time. And what I'm doing is I'm just putting it out there, and then I've already said it, right? So the anxiety and the fear has been expressed in some way, and it's always never as bad as it's going to be, because I'm going to go, I might ask you to volunteer. It's going to be terrible, right? But then they're aware, right? Number one. Number two, it's going to be terrible. I've said the words, but notice I didn't actually say it's going to be, like I wasn't being serious. But language and intent are useful tools. And the second is, I don't ever, and you guys can disagree if that didn't turn out to be the case for your experience, I never ask people to do things that I wouldn't myself do. So that's the reason that it's part of the reason why I make sure that, like, if I'm going to ask my players to, and let me clarify what role-playing means, I suppose. Role-playing to me doesn't mean doing what I do. I'm a performer, right? So I'm good at accents. I'm good at enveloping, displaying characters and things like that. I don't need you to do that. But what I do need you to do is think about what your character would want and do that. That's all I care about. And so to get them there, all I would want them to do is just simply go, hey, I'm doing it, and I'm going to, and I say this all the time, I'm going to look the stupidest, right? Because I'm the one doing the bad guys. Because it's almost always D&D. So I'm the one being a goblin. I'm going to back up for the microphone now. I'm like, right? So already I'm making you guys laugh, and that's the point, right? I'm making a comfortable environment, and no matter what, like, if I'm the one doing the proper Derwin voice, well, chances are you're going to be fine with it. I'm just a cool guy warlock. Yeah, you are. That's fine. Go. You know? Yeah. And it like the line has been set. Try and look more like a dickhead than me. I guarantee you won't do it. And therefore, it's a safe space. Long-winded answer. You'll get used to that.
Yeah, because I think we've talked about this before on the shows. Like, people are afraid to... No, we talked about it with you when we interviewed you. People are afraid to feel vulnerable, especially older people.
Well,
that's in general.
I mean, not even just older people. One of our gang, we're not going to name drop him, refuses to do D&D.
Yeah.
And he came to PAX with us and refused to participate in our session. We booked a space for him and he refused.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't participate.
We've done it once with him playing like a tabletop experience.
So this was hilarious. So this is like, you'll laugh at this as well. For a long time we've been creating our own tabletop RPG.
Love it.
A cyberpunk game.
Love it.
Called Net, Neural Electronic Tabletop.
Nice.
And the whole thing is it's just like cyberpunk, but instead of, we didn't like the way their game was designed in terms of the classes. So it has things like rocker, new journalist or whatever. I was like, it's kind of very 80s. Like, so the version of the game that we play has augmentation. So you can have gun fingers or, arm blades, what have you.
Yeah.
So we were testing that out, and somehow this unnamed gentleman decided to play with us, like for the very first time.
I wasn't there for that.
This was, I think you were, I don't know where you were.
No, I don't think I was there for that.
You might have been in
I would have
Europe.
remembered that.
Maybe you were in Europe.
I don't know. I can't remember when this was. It was this year. So
It wasn't that.
Oh, was this recently?
That sounds
Relatively,
pretty
yeah.
significant, though.
Oh.
You could have been in Europe.
But so anyway, so this, I guess I hadn't fine-tuned the adventure well enough because it was kind of hard.
Okay.
So they get to so there's like a big
First time
combat.
playing.
There was a big combat round.
Yep.
And they were struggling because the other co-host,
so upset.
the other co-host who's here, Alum, he's very much are you looking at me funny? I'm going to pull out my gun kind of guy.
I love, by the way, audience, that he's like, the host that we're talking about goes unnamed. There are 5 people in your team.
No.
No, this is a friend who's not.
He's not directly involved with the show.
Okay,
yeah.
I understand. I thought he was part of the team.
It's not.
There's like
not
5
the other guy at
people,
the team.
and it's not him. It's not him. And the other one.
No. Yeah. So Alum Deep, who can't be here today.
Let's go with L. Simpson. Yes.
He's very hot-headed. He's very hot-headed, so he gets what he wants through force.
Yeah. This player, that was their first time, or the other player?
Alum, who you met at,
he's an aggressive.
He's
player.
an aggressive player.
Yeah, so he plays all the time.
I gathered that.
But he got into some bother because there were these mercenaries, and instead of trying to negotiate with them, he was like, let's just blow them away.
Yeah. So anyway, the combat was difficult.
Yeah, and Christian... I'm sorry.
Okay, it's now silent producer Christian.
Silent producer Christian.
We're throwing
we were filming with cameras. You'd see my face.
No. Okay, so I guess he covers
But
blood.
anyway.
He doesn't listen. We were trying to be polite, but he doesn't
This
listen
freak.
anyway.
He doesn't listen.
Yeah.
Anyway,
He doesn't listen.
in his inventory, which he wasn't paying
talked about
attention
you,
to, he had a very powerful shotgun, and he just wasn't using it. And so when Alum found out, he got very upset.
But that's a case of him being inexperienced and not really...
No, I was like, what gun do you want to use, Christian? Because I was trying to coach him through it.
Right.
And then he was like, I'm just going to use the pistol. And then Alum was like, that episode of How I Met Your Mother where Barney gets really upset and leaves? And
That's when Ted Mosby is dating the porn star. And Barney finds out.
And he's like,
Friendship over. Friendship. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was like that. He's like, what do you mean you used the pistol? You've had a shotgun all along.
Right.
Anyway. I'm sorry.
No.
That was an example of someone who doesn't roleplay being like...
So the punchline basically is that this new player did new player things.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean,
that's also
there's
expected.
not much for me to comment on there.
No, it's just a funny anecdote.
That's tough. How I suppose I have a question on my own. That can be tough if like that other player. How did the player that didn't like it or didn't want to participate, and then he participated, then that happened, did that sour it? Do you think?
We don't know.
No, I don't
Interesting.
think it soured it. He can cop a lot from Alum.
Right.
Like
As do we all.
also, he lets Alum give it to him more than other people, so
Sure.
it was fine.
Okay.
Do
you think he had a good time?
I don't know if he ever has a good time.
This is a
Mate,
conversation
is
for
it hard
another
to hear me?
time. Yeah, no, it's just because it was pointed up and you're a bit further away. So if you stay
I was
on the mic.
projecting a bit more.
Yeah,
I
stay
can,
on
I can
the
do this. Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not hating on Christian. It's just that it's hard to know what he likes and dislikes.
Sure.
It is.
But anyway,
it is a
I
point
think
of
we're getting
interest
off
with him in
track. But I
games.
think what we were talking about was someone who, just in general, doesn't like to play, doesn't like
But
to.
that's really cool that they
have-
were intrigued to participate.
Well, I've never done it.
That
in
was the
games,
first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like because a lot of people are closed off and they don't want to be seen as vulnerable, or they don't want to see as like I still want to have fun and play pretend.
That's also a tough ask of people if they don't want to be put in a vulnerable position. How do you
Especially-
can't force it.
Especially in a public sort of
Yeah.
setting like
Spe-
PAX.
Especially at PAX, the idea of doing that in a very public place with potentially strangers,
Yeah.
it's adding an extra layer
It's extra
of
I'd
pressure.
be
to
very
people.
Social
intrigued to
anxiety,
talk
yeah.
to that new player and see what his experience was like, because that stuff is a really good tuner for me when it comes to GMs. Like I know I'm doing a decent job if I
Yeah.
can get feedback from them, because they don't have enough experience to lie yet. Like I ask very specific questions these days where, this goes for any creative art, but if for GMing, you'll go, did you have fun? It's the most useless question in the world, because people go, yep. And that's the end of the conversation, right? But if you go, what did you like? What did you not like? How was this encounter? Was that too slow, too fast? And then you'll get actual specific feedback. Yeah.
Moving on, we changing the topic a little bit. We most recently had our Halloween episode.
I was bummed. I missed it.
That's
all
right.
right. We thought we could circle back a little bit and discuss what your favorite Halloween movies are, because you're a big
Okay.
Halloween fan.
Yeah.
Favorite horror movie. I always say this every interview we do.
Yeah.
I always say gut feeling. Don't think about it too
No, I
hard.
already know the answer.
Oh, please
Yeah.
continue.
John Carpenter's The Thing.
Oh, thank you. That's mine as well.
Yeah.
Nice, but
Man of tastes.
you also have like 100 top favorite horror movies too.
Well,
Or is the thing the solid gold diamond?
I think
What about
if
Halloween?
you ask me
Halloween's solid.
favorite horror movie, I would probably say The Thing.
Yep.
If you ask me favorite movie,
yeah,
I would say Apocalypse Now. But asterisk,
Solid.
we've talked about this
Yeah.
before. I tried to make a list of
Yeah.
my top favorite movies. I got to 200 movies before I had a panic attack and stopped.
My man.
Like it's like
My man.
you can't choose. There's
Yeah.
so many good movies.
also it changes day to day and time. to
Yeah, it
time.
depends on
what
mood.
your mood. vibe.
Mood, yeah.
So why The Thing?
It rewards you every time you watch it. It is a film that isn't afraid to let very small details go by without you paying attention, but it doesn't detract if you don't notice.
Very good.
At the end of the day, John Carpenter's The Thing is about it's about the characters, and it's about a mystery. Who is the thing? What like how many people are infected and what time? And God bless the Redditors, the people who are just like, all right, if you look at this, if you look at the background, you can sort of see, the glass is broken there. So therefore, like, man, I can't keep track of that stuff, but it's fun to read and then immediately go out the other ear.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm not that intelligent. But I'll tell you, it also is the best example of the kind, because I'm predominantly a horror GM as well. It rides the line in the way that the best horror movies do, which is with comedy. And that might sound strange to those who aren't as familiar with the medium, but trust me, when I did a lot of theater and a lot of confronting theater, it is not uncommon when you're like up in an audience member's face and going or whatever, right? Because
big
it was
nervous laugher.
university studies, theater, nervous laughter,
Yeah.
right? It is what we naturally do to alleviate tension, and I notice it all the time. I used to get offended with like I'm running a serious horror game, people are laughing. Let them. because that's what the good horror movies do, and that's what any in any uncomfortable situations, what we do to alleviate tension. If they're doing that, that means that you've got the
You're under
meter
their skin.
tuned really well. I'll it's really hard to quote the thing without swearing, so I'll do my best. But there's this moment where they determine that I think the doctor is not the thing. It's like, well, that's wonderful. Now, if you don't mind, could someone untie me from this effing couch?
Yeah.
So good.
It's funny you say that. So we went and saw Smile 2 not long ago, which was good, pretty good. But the whole time we're watching it, anytime there was anything vaguely scary on screen,
Sure.
all the people at the back laughing their ass off.
No, but
Yeah.
that was we had a bad crowd for.
Oh yeah, they were
Yeah.
peacocking for the girls. And
Yeah, there was a whole bunch of like young guys and
Young
young
guys
girls
vaping in this.
Yeah, they were just
Yeah.
vaping. Like that wasn't. Yeah.
But no, my point is like, so if you go see these big like tentpole horror movies, there's always a lot of laughter too, because people get uncomfortable.
I remember that.
They want to act tough.
It's that I think he's more correct. Like if you, it depends, right? The only time I really in the cinema heard awkward laughter from memory was when I watched A Quiet Place for the first time, and that's because it
So
was quite a
quiet,
quiet
yeah.
film, you see. So if you're imagining theatre, it's a little like this for long stretches of time.
Yeah.
And then if someone
yeah,
wants
yeah.
to open,
Crunching.
that's it. If someone wants to open their candy,
Oh man.
and that's when the laughter started happening, because it's like that
Yeah.
2 a.m.
The worst-
chip raid, you know, like your mum and like whoever's
Oh,
in
we
your
have
house,
another
and
Christian
you've got the
story.
bag of
Yeah.
chips.
While
and you're
we're
like,
shitting,
oh God,
while we're
just
shitting,
open it for God's sake.
while we're shitting all over Christian tonight. Silent producer Christian.
Have
Top
you,
ti-
Christian?
Top 10 moment. We saw
Harry
the Harry
Potter and the
Potter?
Cursed Child.
Harry Potter and the Cursed Child.
When it was the long
theatre
one,
play.
the first version where it's like the 3-hour one. or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, we saw
On the
it was like
stage.
it was in part 1 and part 2, and it was dead silence. And Christian's like, "I'm gonna open the bag and then open a bag of chips as loud as I possibly can."
Oh, he did it on purpose.
No,
No, it was
but
super loud. I was so we were so embarrassed.
I died.
Yeah.
Especially in the theater, where the actors can.
Yeah, they heard
Set-
it. They
like it's
totally heard
in-
it.
The other time that's happened with
Theater's
us.
a whole different thing. That's
Yeah.
hilarious. I guarantee you, they either bitched about him backstage
yeah.
or laughed about it later. Because I mean, if the play did indeed change from 3 hours to whatever, I bet they probably felt like, well, mate, you know, at some point you got to eat your bloody candy. When are you supposed to do it? You know. So.
The only other time we've had a lot of awkward laughter was it? We're at the Nova. Was it the
Louis
Nova?
Theroux?
My Scientology movie.
Yeah, was it the Nova?
I think so.
Yeah.
We saw the Louis through My Scientology movie, and that's a basket of laughs, right? And it was not a funny movie.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
full of
blinking
distress.
repeatedly,
Yeah.
audience, for those who can't
It's
see me.
it's dealing, it deals with Scientology and distressing themes and all those.
I mean,
kinds
it's
of
a
issues.
it's a funny as hell religion. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
true.
I think it's because they're not used to he's very deadpan. Like he says
Right.
things in an English way, and he'll say like, "Do you want a Lucozade or whatever?" And then he's being sincere,
Yeah,
like.
sure,
but then
sure.
people laugh because they're like, why
And-
is he?
Pretty much people laugh the entire movie, but there's not a joke in the film.
There
People
was-
are just deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's less common, like I'm saying, in the audience, but when you're put in a really horrible situation, you yourself, then yeah, laughter is going to happen. So yeah, to bring it back around to the thing.
Because when we talked to you initially, we did that interview on YouTube, and we talked about your sort of background as a GM, like professional GM, and we were just talking about your theater background.
Yeah.
Can you go into that a bit? Like,
What do you want to know?
where did it start when you were at school? Like,
Yeah.
did you act in like school plays and then
Yeah.
And then-
okay.
graduated to a GM, or were you doing GMing with your friends and
Right.
acting?
Those are a couple of questions. The first thing I did was what were called Trinity College, which is based in Ireland, drama certificates. I don't know why I did them in retrospect. They are a nice little achievement for a child to have, but it's a bit. but they don't really mean anything. But I guess they do in the sense that it might help towards further education. I really couldn't tell you. But what happens is that, proper British people come from all over, and they come to Australia and they judge you on everything that you do, and you can imagine this person with this voice, the longer nose, the tweed jacket, and if the 10-year-old happens to show any weakness, that will be written viscerally in the report. I remember specifically I had this nervous habit. He was nice enough. I'm being glib for the sake of humor, but he's like, Mr. O'Brien seems to have an odd habit of standing on his toes, which is true. I used to, when I was nervous, or actually it wasn't nervous, it was something I heard would help the blood flow, and I was a weird kid. So I'm in the middle of this audition piece, and I'm going on tippy toes like a rocking chair. So that was how I started doing that stuff. My first theatre performance would have been I remember. The first thing I ever did on a stage was this primary school, written by a primary school teacher, clearly about a princess and underwater stuff, and I was an eel. I was basically Iago, I think, from memory. Like I took the princess's pearl, and I was very slimy and oily, which I still think that's my best character bit. So good casting, Miss Spillane. Good job.
Peaked in primary school. I'll never get back to the eel.
From there, it was pretty much a hodgepodge, because I grew up in Brisbane, where look, let's be real, in all of Australia there isn't a ton of work for creative artists. You can do it, and hats off to people that do, but we are a small country in population and a small market, and if you get on Neighbours, congratulations. If you can do voiceover commercials, absolutely go do your thing. But there are limited choices.
Sports bet commercials.
I can't wait for those to die.
That's a whole industry, man.
I can't wait for them to be eviscerated. But they're already on their way. They never used to have those chances are you're about to lose things. Never used to happen, right? Now the government's paying attention to that stuff. Those things deserve to die. Yeah, because we already that's a whole other conversation. Australia has a huge gambling problem, and
we talk about it a lot.
We saw he must have been older than 7 or 8 the other day at a pub, and we saw literally. I'm talking about a young child,
watching the race. Watching the races.
Yeah, he was on the TAB betting app on his iPad, watching the races and navigating the app.
That is horrifying. That is horrifying.
And we were mortified. I'm just like, it's about right. And then you look over and there's a bloody betting ad on the wall, and you're like, I wonder how these correlate.
Well, you did kind of unlock a childhood memory. I mean, I don't have any shade towards my pop. Like he did what he did, and it was a different time. I grew up in the 90s, but a lot of good times with my grandfather, Vincent. We're in the pub where you could take children in at that time, and he would get me a sarsaparilla. He'd smoke his fag and drink his beer, and I'd laugh at him when he lost, which was a lot. And he made a joke out of it. He was very good humour. He was like, "Don't laugh at Poppy. Don't laugh at Poppy." Anyway. After that, as far as acting goes, I'm very fortunate. I got to do a whole bunch of things with my time. I was also involved in choir stuff. I got to go to Japan and do that sort of thing. The highlight was probably, look, for entertainment purposes, that there are other answers, but I quite enjoyed doing I did a Scooby-Doo musical all across Queensland. And I was Shaggy, man. And
That's awesome.
It was really scary, Scoob. And it was great. It was a trip because it was, all suits. And very funny to think about when you think about Queensland heat, right?
Yeah.
The Peppa Pig was really big in that time. This is before Bluey came along and took her crown. they were the opening show, and I remember so clearly. I can't remember her name. I'll call her Vicky for the purposes of this story. I'm getting ready to go on. I'm one of the people who isn't in a suit, so it's still hot. I think Gladstone, and so we're up north. It's pretty humid, sticky, and they're dancing away in their costumed outfits. And in those shows, there's always a host, a human person going, "This is what Pippa says," even though they can't say anything because I have no mouth and I must scream. Then they come off, and Vicky is playing Peppa's little brother George. She takes off the head of the thing, going backstage like immediately, of course, and she's this tiny little punk girl. Think Deborah Harry, just platinum blonde spikes up to the nethers, and she takes off George's head, and her blonde spikes have kind of wilted like a flower that's dying because of all the sweat, and she starts smoking. so George is decapitated, and this woman's living in his skin smoking a cigarette.
I can imagine that would ruin the magic
Jesus.
for a child.
Oh, well, look, it was backstage for a reason. But yeah, imagine that. Imagine like the curtain falls, just like, George is dead.
There's a
Simpsons
There's a
gag.
Simpsons
Yeah.
joke somewhere here. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, look, I've had a very fortunate, privileged life, and the hop to pro GMing was as simple as I wasn't getting as much work as I wanted to, and I did have the opportunity to go over. There's a very great school called the Stella Adler school. Very, very famous and great teachings. Had I gone, I'd probably be living in California now, paying way too much rent, and being, who knows, maybe very famous. Chances are very miserable. There are a lot of actors in Hollywood. But what I wasn't willing to do at the time was sacrifice my relationship, of which I have been with her for 10 years now, and we got engaged almost 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So I think the proof is in the pudding there. It turned out to be the right choice for me. Don't get it twisted. Hey, Australian casting directors, you ever want to hire, a gremlin man? That's probably my range,
The credit card goblin. ING.
Copyright that. That's credit card gremlin.
International. What does the ING stand for? But the G is goblin.
It's like this whole campaign about credit card fraud. It's the credit card gremlin. I'm gonna steal your information. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
Do you still go out for auditions and stuff?
Not as much. I've been playing with the idea. I'm pretty much gonna centrally do voice acting now because I've recently gotten very heavily tattooed, and they don't like that. Because it's harder. There's a whole bunch of reasons for it, but one is it doesn't fit the character brief as well. The second is technically you have to pay. Or at least get permission.
You got DC character. You got Batman.
No. Well, it's more that any tattoo artist.
Oh yes, I didn't think of that.
Yeah, because it's their design on your body.
Yeah.
So, but for context, I have Batman on my arm audience, so that's why.
It's cool.
We might go to a very quick break, and we'll be back with more after this.
Commercial.
Yeah, we're back on the Tuesday Review, talking to Mr. Peg in the studio, Jack Squarepeg, Jack O'Brien Squarepeg.
Just before I
Right.
forget.
Like we've never been pegged before.
I know, that's the first time she's our biggest peg.
That's it.
I love that you're not allowed to swear, but you're basically like...
Hey, we ride the line.
Yeah.
We've definitely said some things on the air that we really
Oh
shouldn't
yeah,
have
there was
before.
a stretch of like a year or two where I was like, I don't care. I'm just gonna say whatever I want.
voice and pig in my
That's it. Make it as creepy as you can.
All right.
I'm sorry to interrupt the flow.
Back here.
Amazing. You just had that ready to go.
Do I have a soundboard here?
Fantastic.
After
I
we
knew I liked
interviewed
it.
you for our PAX event,
Yes, sir.
I told you that James and myself were going to talk to Michael O'Brien. And you
I did
asked
see that
me
interview.
to ask him a specific question about
Yes.
the merger between Moon
Yeah.
Design and Chaosium.
Yep.
And
I saw the result.
Oh, good. I was gonna say
Yeah.
well, I found a way to try and diplomatically ask him.
Yeah.
He's a nice guy. That
He's
was a
a
really
lovely
good
guy.
interview.
Yeah.
We're hoping to go to Chaosium Con.
Yeah, I
fingers
want
crossed.
to talk to you guys after, once we wrap up about that.
Oh, yeah,
'cause,
we'll talk about it
I
after.
feel like we can make something happen there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Definitely.
definitely a future. We can discuss this more about after, but there's definitely a future for like a kind of doing something live on the radio with like regarding an actual play or kind of like
Well, I mean,
We talked about that a little bit.
Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Jack, you stream on Twitch.
I do.
Right? Do you do tabletop
Yes, mate.
stuff? So
Predominantly.
yeah. So I mean, and there's stuff like Critical Role and
Yeah.
all that. So it's like
but,
not.
But I think the radio is the interesting niche concept.
My advice would be number one, I'm down. Number two, make callers influence the roles or
Ooh,
something.
that would be
That's
great.
So like
Yeah,
if people
that
are
would
listening,
be
it's
cool.
just like, hey, I want give them a penalty die. Okay, we'll do, mate. Thanks.
That's see, these are the kinds of ideas that we wouldn't have.
Yeah,
very
yeah.
clever, you see.
And I think there is a space for that. I think it's really interesting, and it
Yeah.
brings something a bit fresh, something we don't really see that much of anymore. Especially trying to
am-
keep radio interesting for
I am
people.
extremely passionate about the old school radio play. My favorite version of Lord of the Rings is the BBC radio play. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can find it on the Internet Archive, unless they've taken it down, because Internet Archive's in a bit of hot water recently.
I think it's on YouTube. It used to
Yeah, well, let me tell you, it's old school techniques, but they still work so well
Yeah.
today.
It's so
Just, Gandalf, where are you? I'm over here.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
all of that stuff. And it's just literally them like 10 feet from the microphone instead. And
Coconuts for the
sounds.
horses.
Exactly. Soundscapes and things like that. And the ring they do really well. It's this woo sound. So when
Yeah.
it like, once you hear it once, you're like, that's the ring. There is, I believe that if people heard that stuff, there would be an audience for it, because there's nothing. A good narrative is a good narrative, no matter its
Yeah.
medium.
Yeah.
And I'm honestly a big fan of it, because I'm also quite poor and cheap, and so having sound effects make your imagination do the work.
Well, it's
I mean, that's
interesting-
why the book still exists, right? At the end of the day, it's the same idea.
our co-host Alum, he drives a lot for work, and he likes driving anyway. So he doesn't really read books. He listens to audiobooks. And we were thinking about Alum and me were talking about this a while ago.
Yeah.
About how like for a lot of people James, including James, I believe that's the
Yeah.
main way you
Same.
guys interface with novels.
Yeah.
Same, yeah.
Um.
I heard a joke once that truck drivers are probably the most well-read in society.
I mean,
at this
it's like
point.
you're driving for 10 hours a day.
Yeah, I got through War and Peace in about 2 weeks, mate.
I would believe it too. But it's fascinating.
only-
There was a couple years ago, James, Nathan, and me were talking about the idea of coming up with like not an audio novel, but like
Audio
Radio
drama.
audio dramas,
Yeah.
like because it's an untapped resource where
Yeah.
you can communicate things through like voice actors
100%.
and that type of thing that you can't really do through text. Like to me, the novel's going to be the ultimate art form for narrative, personally.
Sure.
But for
You're
a
allowed to
lot of people, including myself these days, I don't really like reading. My attention span's so much worse than it used to be. But like, there's something about the audio environment that's so interesting when it comes to narrative.
If it's done well, I think most things pale in comparison, because it does everything the novel does with more direct artistic intention in your brain. At the end of the day, if you're imagining what the song sounds like in Lord of the Rings, for example, the road goes ever on and on down
Yeah.
from the door where it began, right? Well, they have their own version of that in the BBC. I'm not going to sing it because I don't remember it, but that's one version. The movie has another, and there is something to be said about that, about like truly having the artistic intention without the homework Like, obviously, you can listen to Tolkien, and by the way, you want true ASMR? You want to go to sleep? Listen to a Tolkien interview. Because he'll talk about, yes, I thought about those languages. As he's lighting a
pipe.
match for his pipe. And I'm like, oh my God, Thanks, John, from beyond the grave. I appreciate it. Oh, man. So good.
Yeah.
No, because there's a lot of podcasting in general, and Audible and all that. It's a huge business now.
Definitely.
It's something would be, and I think the resources to make it would be closer to what we could achieve than making a film, or a YouTube series.
Hold on. The Russians made Lord of the Rings with no money, right? Just saying we could do it.
That's true.
I don't know, man. We couldn't afford to do it the way they did it.
God bless the people who can cobble together the money for filmmaking. I love filmmaking.
Oh, yeah. We need more
I
Roger
love the
Cormans in
set.
the world.
Oh, God bless him.
So I think there's a lot of potential.
Yeah. Speaking of Roger Corman, horror movies again.
Hey.
Sorry, Jackie, because this is how we.
You turn.
Last week, we talked about a bunch of horror movies, and I had so many that I wanted to get to that I didn't get to. But is there anything you watched that comes to mind? In October.
I'm trying to think of something that might sound interesting on air.
It doesn't
have to be.
No.
Everything's interesting.
Yeah. No, like don't feel you have to be funny or anything or interesting.
I'm
we want the
really
truth.
hilarious,
We want the real Jack.
No.
The real Mr.
We don't want the pig. We want the O'Brien.
That's it. No,
all right, there you go. All right.
See,
I'll do the rest of the interview like this. Screw the English. All right.
The reason we like talking to people is because people are interesting. So we want to know how you feel about stuff. So it's like if you watched a boring movie like you think is just fascinating, we want to know about it.
Well, I'll tell you what. Ever since I watched The Devil's Rejects for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and I can't think of Freebird now without that final scene of them rushing the cops. It's such a stupid movie.
I don't know. I don't know if you've listened to many of our previous episodes. I whinged quite hard about that movie not too long ago.
No, please. I probably won't disagree with you. The difference is I found it entertaining rather than offensive.
They frustrate.
It's both.
They frustrate me.
Sure.
Because the first movie is decent. All right.
You know what? I thought it was the first one.
Yeah.
I screwed up. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, House is next. And I'm like,
no.
So
the House of a Thousand Corpses is okay.
Sure.
All right. They're like, they're the villains from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's
basically.
fine. And then the second movie, he tries to make them heroes.
Yeah.
They're not. Stop it.
I don't know if that's true.
He has a thing for anti-heroes.
Yeah. I honestly, I think I disagree with you, but I do...
Maybe not heroes, but he tries to redeem them a little bit.
I don't agree with that either. But what I do think is that he understood what that audience was there for. And you might not be this kind of person, but plenty of people I know, and some, me, depending on how many beers I've had, will watch a slasher movie and go, 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 go. That's who that movie is for. And that does not mean that they're cool or good or great. And here's where I vehemently disagree, because at the end of the day, it is got this, it's constantly reminding the audience through dialogue that they're awful, number one. Yeah. Number two, they open with a shootout that takes some of them out, or at least captures them. They are on the run. They are disgraced. They're being sought after. And then they die in a shootout. Now, do I think that they're trying to make the characters look, quote unquote, cool within that thing? Yes. But here's the trick. If you're watching that kind of film to begin with, that's going to happen.
Yeah, that is true.
I call it the Ned Kelly circle thing, right? At the end of the day, your opinion on Ned Kelly depends on who you are. But ultimately, no matter what you do, it's kind of badass. That
is true. I didn't like them in the first movie being objective, nasty villains. And then in the second movie...
It pivots a bit,
playing kind of like...
I haven't seen
heroic,
the first one, to be fair.
uplifting-
So
Outlaws.
I might disagree with you. I might agree with you.
Well,
watching the first one.
The first one, they're like cannibals that, capture
Sure.
people in a house, and it's like, it's a horror house, right?
Yep,
The
yep.
second one, it's like they're escaping, there's uplifting heroic music. And I'm just like, the tonal clashes from the first to the
I
second
didn't
movie.
hear heroic music when they were leaving. No,
No, like when they
at
survive.
the end, you mean?
Yeah.
At the very end, you mean Freebird?
Oh, I can't remember. It was.
I don't
watched
think.
it.
No.
I watched it
catch
over a
that.
month ago, but in my Letterboxd review, I complained about it. So
It's interesting, right? We
I'd have
talked
to
about
rewatch it.
what
And
is
then
it about
three
slashes?
from Hell makes
What is it
much
about
worse.
slashes?
Yeah.
Yeah, but like we love them as a society. We've talked about this last. I think it could have been last Halloween. We were talking about how human beings, we kind of enjoy violence, even though it makes us uncomfortable when it happens in the real world. There's something about our disconnection from actual violence that makes watching it on screen so enticing.
Well, I think it's as simple as it's the same thing that makes metalheads probably the nicest community in the world, which is that you get your aggression out through stuff that doesn't matter.
It's an
Now-
outlet.
It's an outlet. The fact is, unless it's a snuff film, these are actors that are getting paid. Nothing actually happened, and hopefully everyone walked home having made something that was at least fun to film together. And then it comes out, and you've got a bunch of people who, for whatever reason, get their jollies. And I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not gonna dive into that. But it's as simple as it isn't real. So
Yeah.
you
I mean,
can
you
go,
can-
go, go, go.
You can also
go,
take it
Freddy!
down. You can also take it down to a much more simplistic answer. Is
Yeah.
that it makes people like to be thrilled. They like to be
The
scared.
adrenaline.
You get
It's
adrenaline rush.
Adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be as simple as that. It's exciting.
You get to scratch that lizard
Yeah.
part of your brain
Yeah,
that
yeah.
usually
Yeah.
while
Yeah.
you're working.
Same
or
reason people go to
living
watch horror
is-
movies.
But
Yeah.
why is it like ultimately a thrill? Because it's not
yeah,
real.
exactly.
it's not real.
You know,
Yeah.
we were talking while I don't know if this was off air or on air, but we were talking about how there's been complaints, and I believe you're a millennial like us,
Yeah.
so I'm
91.
comfortable. I'm comfortable saying it in this studio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Gen Zs seem to have a really soft
You
mentality.
could not sound more boomer.
Yeah.
They're so soft.
Well, no, it's something.
They
If
need
you,
to have
Get
the
off
glass
my
of concrete, mate.
Back in my day,
no,
used to walk to school uphill both ways
I know.
in the
Barefoot
snow.
In the
No,
snow.
no, like, you know, like I'll cop it in the sense that like I'm on Twitter all the time, and like so
That's your
sometimes
problem.
There'll be these big
Go on,
arguments
go on.
online about how like people, mostly Gen Zs, believe that there's too much sex scenes in movies. How are you killing a kid and you don't kill animals and kids in movies? That's disgusting. And I'm like, man, we watched When Evil Lurks, and we were talking about how the Spanish and actually Spanish
Argentinian,
/
yeah.
South American, they just don't care. They don't care what people think. They'll do whatever they want.
Okay.
But yeah, it frustrates me when you get these great movies and people like, oh, unnecessary sex scenes. Like they don't add anything to the subtext of the movie. Same with violence. Like you can, I'm not saying children should die in films, but you can absolutely kill a child in a horror movie because it'll further the plot and it's also awful to watch, which adds to the horror.
I know we-
Here's where I... Sorry.
No, you
go.
go. You go.
No,
you.
no, you were speaking.
We talked about this off air. I'm not sure if we talked about on air, but I think it's not even just necessarily a Gen Z problem. It's like just in general, especially with mainstream media, like people just don't want to be challenged or disturbed.
It's also
at
the
all.
That's true.
Disneyfication of
Yeah.
the-
Yeah, yeah.
It's definitely
entire-
starting... people
Like,
are commenting on
it-
colleges all the time, like having safe spaces
Yeah.
be predominantly
Like,
the thing.
no
That's
one-
definitely a thing.
No one wants to think about anything because everything's so awful over the
Right.
time. So if there's anything in a movie that might make someone somewhere a little bit uncomfortable, it's just like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also from a business perspective, and this as
Yeah.
a movie show, we've ranted about this many times on the show. You go to the cinemas these days, depending on where you are. In our area, for instance, it's Indian films and Disney films.
Sure.
And wherever you are, your kind of, I guess, your subgenre of films that are played there for the community will vary.
Yep.
yeah, but it's mostly whatever plays at the cinema is a mainstream
Yeah. So we're
chain
lucky.
cinema. Is,
So we're lucky by the
Marvel
being that
movies.
we've seen some of these Bollywood movies at the cinemas, and they're very different, and we're glad to have that experience. But depending on where you go, your mileage may vary. Your village or your Hoyts aren't going to show anything too out
No.
there, right?
It's not
Yeah.
in their
It's-
business model.
No, it's all movies designed to get the most broadest reach possible,
Bums
and that
and
means keeping it safe, or
Yeah.
Yeah,
or
yeah,
you know
yeah.
at least not pushing any boundaries.
Yeah.
Let me go back to what you were saying before.
My boomer rant. Apologies.
Yeah, it was a rant. There wasn't really a question in there, but I'm going to respond anyway.
I ranted a lot. I'm sorry.
I essentially agree with you. I think content warnings are important, but I think what a lot of people miss, including the people that critique it, is that we already had those. They're called the things that are on the front of any DVD.
Yeah.
case,
The warning labels, yeah.
right? That's what that's
The rating,
for.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
just update that stuff. Conversation over. You don't like what you read, don't watch it. If you do watch something and it surprises you or challenges you, none of my business, whatever. Like you can be offended. I don't think that's a useful place to be, because it leads into my point, which is, so nothing happens if you're offended, and nothing will happen. All you're doing is screaming into the void. And that's as it should be. Like you can voice your opinion. That is what a democracy is.
Oh, 100%.
I have no issue with people saying these things, but to quote the great Steve Hughes, will then be offended.
Yeah. Look,
Nothing happens.
I think ultimately the point I was trying to make, 'cause I rant a lot, so apologies. But the point
That's
I
what
was
we
trying
do
to
on this
make
show.
is that
Rant and whinge.
Yeah, that's what we do. We talk a lot about media literacy, and I think that's the kind of broader point, is that some people, mostly younger people from what I've seen, is like they'll see a sex scene and they'll think, what does this add to the film, or what does that subtract from the film? And I'm like, you have to look at, like, every scene is to drive character or narrative or to complicate things.
But it's
Generally
also
speaking.
it's also okay for a movie just to have a titillating sex scene.
Yeah, that's
like,
right.
Who cares? Like that's
It adds to the
depends
texture
on what
of
the
the
movie
film.
is.
yeah, it depends on the movie.
For me, basically what it comes down to is, what is your offendedness like doing? If you didn't like something, I personally think it's a waste of time to talk about it, but if that's what you want to do with your time on with your limited time on this earth, go nuts. But where I draw the line is where they try to change curriculum, or they try to change what's being shown to the public or to people that should experience things. That's very close to me to banning book behavior, and and I don't go for that shit.
No.
That's not something I will ever be a part of.
We've
If
talked
you
about-
want to create a safe space for yourself, here's the thing, nothing's safe, right? You're not going to cover yourself in bubble wrap every day. Like every time you go out anywhere, nothing's safe. There is no safety.
I think that, like, when we watch movies, we always try to, and read books and play games and whatever, we always try to engage with them based on what they're showing us, not based on what we think they should be showing us or how we think they should be making us feel. And I think that's how people should approach all art, whether it's a tabletop game they've never played or a movie or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people go into watching movies with this idea that, like, that shouldn't be in there. I wouldn't have put that in there.
Basically looking to pick a fight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we watched a movie called The Coffee Table for a Halloween special.
Cool.
And, like, man, let me tell you, like, I rated it 5 stars. Am I ever going to watch it again? Maybe in 15 years, just to feel how harrowing hell feels again. Like, I think people need to engage with things that are going to make them uncomfortable, because I can say that I have different perspectives now.
You also don't have to
agree.
like everything that you see,
No.
or
Like,
you don't have
have
to
you
watch
seen-
everything.
Did you watch Metropolis by any chance? Megalopolis, sorry.
Megalopolis.
No. I want to, but I didn't want to be held hostage in a theater if I hated it.
Well, see, that's what's so interesting about it. Is this is the movie, like, the complete antithesis of everyone I've been whinging about. Like, this is like everything they would possibly hate in the world, and it's also a must. Like James says, I understand why people hate it.
Yeah.
But it's
Did you like it or did you hate it?
yes,
Yes.
it's a masterpiece.
Yeah.
But it also kind of sucks.
I will let you know when I've seen it. I do plan to see it. I think that as far as what Coppola intended, it's clearly what he intended to make out of it. And
Maybe.
But yeah, that's
Well,
we had questions.
well, I don't know. If you
I
believe
mean-
the stories of him being in his trailer, just getting high for 8 hours and then filming a scene,
Makes sense.
I can see that in the movie too.
Yeah.
Is that his original intention? I don't know.
Look,
what,
it's-
getting high? I mean, no one
Yeah.
shoved the needle in his arm, did they?
It's completely unfiltered creativity. Like, with the highs and lows that entails.
But I think people also need to be challenged too.
Yeah.
That's also part of it. When people, they want to go to the movies and they don't want to be challenged, they don't want to learn something new, they don't want to use movies as an empathy tool or a learning tool. for any particular issue. I think people do need to be challenged, but that's with all forms of art as well.
The only thing I would encourage is that we change the language, right? You need to see this. And what it reminds me of is the most annoying friends I used to have when I was growing up, which was, oh my God, you haven't seen this movie? You haven't lived until you've seen this. I hate them.
I do that. What do you mean you haven't seen?
It's okay, but like I will tell you from my experience, all it did was discourage me. Yeah. And that goes for lack of a better word, pushing people towards the result that we want.
Yeah.
We need to understand that if people are at that position, whatever they may be, we need to let them figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, no.
And we need to be kind and gentle
and
remind them of what it is that we're trying to achieve, which is that, ultimately, if they are in that, little bubble wrap bubble metaphor I made before, you going, you need to do is not going to do anything. No. If anything, they're going to double down.
That's not what I meant.
Instead, you go, okay.
I think, I don't mean, let's throw someone out and be like, let's watch Cannibal Holocaust. I'm like, no, it's just people need to be just
open to it,
challenging themselves in wherever they're starting from.
But I'm commenting on the way that you use the sentence. No one needs to do anything.
No.
Right. And to be clear, I don't think that's what you meant, but it is what you said.
Yeah.
And I think. What I'm basically trying to say is that if we want people to be able to do this, I found that the best way to do it is just go, look, let's use a movie that might be a little intense or whatever, and we're trying to recommend it to someone that might be offended. Just, hey man, just make sure you're comfortable. But hey, if you think you can handle it, it'll change some stuff. And if you make it sound like something that's exciting or interesting, what it ultimately does is what I want to see, which is I'm not that interested in talking about negatives. Whether it's I didn't like this movie or I didn't like this scene within this movie and it triggered me. I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. If you want to be offended, that's fine. But I think it's more interesting to talk about, okay, but if we're going to go down that route, let's at least be constructive.
Yeah, constructive criticisms. Yeah. I think for many years on the show, we were watching as much as we possibly could to keep up with what was coming out and what was in the current zeitgeist and what people were talking about.
Sure.
And we will watch so much stuff that we hated, and then we just complain about it on the show.
To be fair, it does get clicks, so I get it.
Yeah, but it got draining. It was like we watch movies because we like them and we love them and we want to talk about them, and so it got to a point where we're just like, you know what, we're gonna just watch things we want to watch, not because it might be good for the clicks and good for the views, but and obviously sometimes it's still bad and we complain about it, but we're now not seeking out every single movie, even though we know it's gonna suck and we know it's gonna.
That also gets worse when you get more attention is the wrong word, but you'll get more people ask to watch for us to watch their movies, and if we watch it and we really hate it, I'm like, what do? Do we just not respond? Do we usually?
I think it comes down to sorry, you.
Yeah, I would say usually we just kind of will watch it and we'll just say, sorry, we can't review it, or we're busy, or we're trying to save people's feelings.
I don't think that's useful though, because But
the problem with independent films as well is I'm like, if we don't want to be shutting people down, especially when
they've created something and it's hard. We always say nobody wants to make a bad film, right?
And that's part of movie criticism, but we're also dealing with, I'm not going to we use the term fragile movies, right? People who've invested their own money and their own livelihoods, and that's where we get uncomfortable when we don't necessarily want to talk shit on someone's film, and then I don't know, how do you grow while maintaining that integrity?
I will say that I understand and respect what you're saying, but in the same way, notice how it almost seems like I'm flip-flopping, but I'm actually keeping true to my original point, which is that I think you can not like something and be constructive.
Yeah.
I think you can be triggered by something and try to explore why. Yeah. Because that's ultimately a you thing, and you need to figure that out. That's a you problem.
Yeah.
Right? And when it comes to what you're saying, and look, to be clear, I'm not a movie critic. I used to be for writing and things like that, but I don't do it presently.
We have to talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk. It was for websites a long time ago, but I think as long as God, I sound like such a hippie, but I look like one, so it's fine. But as long as it's coming from a place of kindness, people will hopefully understand where you're coming from. I, as an artist myself, would rather hear what didn't work for someone with a suggestion of what could be better. That's what I look for. And that's what I would ask for from people who have a problem with anything in media. Because of course you can go, I hated it. This thing ruined my life. And sure, okay. But like, okay, let's imagine you're the artist. Let's do a thought exercise. What would you do? And then what that does is that no matter what, someone gets something out of it. Hopefully everyone gets something out of it. Either talking about it makes the critic realize that there's more to it than just thing bad. Yeah. And the artist, in the instance of what you're talking about, as one, I don't mind if someone doesn't like something. What I do mind is when someone is cruel. Yeah. And I've had 100%, cruel reviews.
And we've never
I don't think you're cruel
No,
people.
we've never been cruel. But it's also a situation where with a film and we've really hated it and someone's asked it, the film's already made. I'm like, it's not something they can go back and necessarily do.
Yeah, but saying
about.
This sucks, you suck is not helpful to anyone.
No, we wouldn't. Yeah,
we wouldn't do that. Actually, there's a few.
Actually, it depends on how bad.
There's a few movies where we'd have to be like, this sucks and you suck. And
I must admit, I've never been in that situation before. That must be really difficult. Being in a situation where you can see someone's put a lot of passion and drive and money behind it, and you have nothing nice to say. That would be hard, no matter what you do.
If it's like if it's theater or something that's more malleable and can change a little bit, I'm like, that's also kind of different.
Or if it's a work in progress.
Or if it's a work in progress, but
exactly.
Yeah.
But
pointing. We all good?
Should we go off?
Yeah, we're all out of time for our live portion of the show. If Jack wants to continue, the show will continue after this. Otherwise, Matty J's on with Car Talk next. We'll be back right after this. You are back on the Tuesday Review talking with Jack Squarepeg in the studio. Continuing from where we left off, I suppose. It's not easy being a critic.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy being a creative person.
Or just, creative in general. Anytime you're expressing thoughts about other people's creations or creating something yourself, you're leaving yourself in a vulnerable position.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you, Jack, is because you're a creative person, an interesting person. And as an artiste...
Hey man, look, you could do the voices, okay? You're like 10 times more creative than us.
Oh yeah, we're a bunch of hacks. We were talking about being a hack before we started recording.
Yeah.
It's like, we're a bunch of hacks.
Yeah.
This is why we talk to interesting people like
about
you.
Quentin Tarantino being
yeah.
A hack is someone who does something at low effort.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess we put effort in. It's just we have limited time and resources. So I guess.
Aren't hacks. What was the question?
I forgot. Callum asked this to someone at PAX. Can you think of a campaign you did as a GM or as a player that just stands out?
That stuck with you. I think I was like one that made an impression on you. So it's like...
You asked that to Michael O'Brien. You got a really good answer too.
Yeah,
he had a great.
There are some. I'm sure as a professional GM, you have a lot of memorable campaigns.
Sure.
But like, what's the one that really made you sit up and think this is something special?
Okay. Well, you got to remember, I'm still relatively young in my career as a pro GM, so I'll probably have better answers in 20 years.
Yeah.
For now, it is still the thing that started it all, which was my home game with the adventuring group known as Excelsior. And they, God almighty, it's like listening to someone's dreams, audience, bear with me. And there was a paladin. So, fucking Jesus, shoot me in the mouth. So the origin of that, and pretty much the whole reason why I became a GM to start with and then a pro GM, was because I was starting to get probably into the hobby when I moved to Melbourne, I'd played a little bit in my share house, and I was strategically kept out of a D&D game that all the housemates were playing, which made me sad.
Oh, yeah.
But we played another game, which was Vampire the Masquerade, and that's the Requiem, which is how we started, and that was nutty, and that's a story for another day. But then I kind of missed that feeling, and a fellow actor who will go unnamed because he was a bit of a prick was running the game, a Star Wars game. I can't remember the name of the system, but it's the one with the funky dice.
Yes,
Yeah,
we saw.
we know what you're talking about.
I
We
don't
know the
recommend
name,
that
yeah.
system, by the way. I think
Penny
it's trash.
Arcade did a live play of that one.
Imperium or no?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Edge of the Empire,
Yeah,
something.
some-
Well, anyway, it's the one with colored dice
Yes,
that mean
yep.
stuff, and it's a way to get you to spend more money on dice. It's a rot. Don't do it. But anyway, we had fun, but then the GM turned out to be an unreliable dickhead, and I thought, screw it, I'll run a game. And from there, I got some people together. A good chunk of it was that we were. I was passionate about a show on Australian television, ABC, called Good Game, and I met some people through fans of that.
Good
so
Game.
that was my first player.
That's a memory unlocked.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
a great show. And I have a photo with the creator and producer. She was great. Janet is her name. Anyway, so players got together, and it was just a one shot with my girlfriend at the time, now fiance, an actor friend of mine, and one person who ended up leaving the group after like 4 months, but still fondly remembered. Trying to remember who was there, and I think that and my best friend from Brisbane, whose name is Karen, who is one of my cast members in my show Trouble Over Yonder, which is Pulp Cthulhu Cowboy Nonsense on youtube.com/@Squarepeg. But so long story short, those characters were, if I remember correctly, a tiefling paladin, which is like a hell child knight, hooves, tail, whole thing. Except she was hiding herself because she was like an albino tiefling, and so she had her hooves and her boots, which were very uncomfortable, like custom made shoes. There was a halfling cleric. We had Luke playing Tazik the barbarian, who was a half elf. We had Izzy, who played Andraste, the wood elf bard, and from there, cut to 3.5 years later, they've gone from level 1 to level 20, so basically 4 years, getting together weekly, no joke, every Thursday.
Wow.
And some people dropped off, but that finale, let me tell you, I have recordings of it. I can even I'll ask Izzy for it. Maybe you can like slot it in to kind of reinforce the point. It's a beautiful moment that she managed to capture without my knowledge. She definitely had my consent unknowingly. So players dropped off, players came, players went, and the bad guy of that campaign was a demon who was the warlock's patron. Now, for those who don't know what those words mean, think of magical sugar daddy. And he never really meant to invoke Baylor. Art, played by Tom, he was there from the beginning as well. But he did what he had to do until he cheated the contract by getting his head lopped off by a fairy queen, and he became a warlock of the Summer Queen instead. But Baylor took issue with that, and he was essentially being released from his ice prison. He was known as Baylor the Betrayer. And this is all homebrew nonsense, and as I'm sure you can tell.
No, it's the best of good stuff, though.
Yeah. And so the devils and the demons were having a fight, and he believed he was a better devil than a demon. So he tried to be a devil, and so on and so forth. He becomes the big bad guy at the end, level 20. And basically, I had this little ploy in the back of my notes. So a GM is a storyteller, and they do the best they can, but it depends on what players do. So all you can really do is have contingencies. So I hedged my bets, and I thought to myself, at some point, Art, who is the former patron of Baelor the Betrayer, Baelor who is waking up, Baelor the big bad guy who will destroy the world just by waking up, at some point, Art will use Greg, his tiny little pseudo-dragon familiar, to go and scout as they go through, I want to say, it was the Hells at the time. Because that's what he does. Natural, right? You use your abilities. But I wasn't sure, but I'm like, okay, this will be fun if it turns out to be what it is. And I was right. He did send Greg up ahead. Now here's the trick. You might have caught this if you're a D&D person. If you are a warlock and you make a contract or a pact with a patron, technically speaking, all your spells, all of your abilities come from that patron, including your familiar. So basically, I wanted to twist the knife emotionally. So he sends Greg, who he's been buddies with ever since he started level 1. So 3.5 years he's had this little red dragon.
Oh no.
And
Callum knows where this is going.
you might not. And Baelor's like, thank you. I'll have some of that. Takes Greg. When the final fight comes around, the NPC that I tried to get rid of, they loved him. I'll send you a picture of the entire crew. My partner's a very talented artist, and she made the art of these characters. One of them is this half-orc played by me, and he sounds like this. His name is Relic. And he he did a switcheroo, and let me give some context. They loved this NPC. An NPC is a non-player character. They loved this guy so much. He was not part of the group. He was me, right? And I'm like, this is weird. Like I know he's the best friend at the Barbarian, but I'm gonna give him an excuse to write him out of the story. Like, this is your story, not mine. They loved him so much. They went, Relic could be in trouble. And they spent, no joke, like 4 or 5 months going into the Hells because he was dealing with the Baelor problem to get information and stuff. So they went and got him. So when I say Relic, that's who I mean, like a big important thing. And NPCs are going back and forth. It's this big final battle. The halfling cleric who left about 4 months ago, I mentioned that. I got him to record like a little voice slice, and he's like, hey guys, I'm here, and it's like this spiritual thing, and he does like a ton of damage to Baelor as this fight is happening, and he goes, let's kill this, and then because he's not actually there, so it's just this voice slice. Magic's flying left and right, and Ralik keeps this utter secret because he knows that Art is compromised, the warlock of Baelor, because their minds are connected. So he summons Nespa. I can't believe I remember all these names. It's been a long time. The devil general who hates Baelor. Baelor's getting up and rising, and now it's this huge kaiju battle that is happening between the two of them. So it's this epic, Marvel-esque ending. And all the while, Greg, this tiny little dragon, is the main threat to the players. Baelor has enlarged him, made him this black shadow dragon, and twisted him. So it's the ending of Aladdin, basically, is what I've done. And the entire time they're like trying to knock down Greg so that he'll calm down, and they're trying to get Baelor closer because there's no way they're going to fight him. He's a kaiju at this point. They're just trying to get him to the hell portal. A whole bunch of other stuff happens. But the long and the short of it is that they win the day by Miskin, the paladin, the tiefling paladin, sacrificing herself to get the Baelor over the line into the hell portal. Nespa appreciates what she's done and tosses her back up again, back up the hell tunnel. And right at the end, after all of this epic stuff has happened and Baylor has gone away, he is like going to be in like an even more secure prison now. You can't kill him, but you can lock him in umpteenth chains. The smarter people among you might sort of realize what's happened, right? Because Baylor is now officially out of the picture. So what happens to the contract? And the results of said contract. So Greg is a result of said contract. He held back. He tried not to attack them. And they won. But he was a shadow dragon. He was transformed. And he was a result of a contract that no longer existed. So Greg began to dissipate. And I knew this ahead of time. And I'm getting a little weepy thinking about it.
Doesn't make it easier.
It's very visceral for me because I can remember all the faces at the table as they sort of realized like the penny dropped, right? Nothing is better in anything in film or theatre when the logical conclusion comes to you without you saying anything as a storyteller.
Yeah.
Because they see the dissipating and they're like, oh. And long story short, the Warlock goes up and he's like 100th of the size of this massive shadow dragon. And Greg is panicking a little bit, trying to stay calm, but wants his friend with him. And they exchange goodbyes. Art is played immaculately by Tom, who is one of the more first to be silly role players, but he's totally locked into the moment. And I'm looking directly in his eyes as, I say, I love you, boss. And he's got his hand on like the snout of the dragon. And he says, I'm going to do a bad version of his accent where he goes, I love you too, pal. And then the dragon dissipates. But from that point on, his hand became black from the shadow power.
Cool.
So he became known as Art Blackhand.
Nice.
Wow.
And after that, basically I just did this little finale thing where I described how every year this group would get together to remember the old times and discuss and catch up and just be together. Where I think I stole a lyric from one of my favorite artists, Frank Turner, where I said, and in spite of everything, because in spite was the tagline of the campaign. In spite, meaning to be enraged, or in spite of everything, we persevere, which is the tagline for all the characters. We don't have time to go into that, and I'll be here for 10 years. But I said, so in spite of all, there is this one time when things were okay. And that's when we ended. And the recording is there, and it probably does a better version because it was actually happening. And I'm so glad she recorded that. And that was a very long-winded story. But when you've got that captive audience and everyone that was a part of that 3.5-year period was there in some way, and you had the dedication of all those people, which I don't know if we'll ever get to have again because life changes and people get busy and a job changes and people get married and have kids, so who knows. but I'm so privileged. I don't know if that can ever be topped. If nothing else, because it was the only campaign on my mind. I've got so many that I have to worry about now. But, I was doing my regular Joe job, and so I'd constantly be scrolling stuff in my notebook. But as far as that goes, that's probably the most memorable one for a whole bunch of reasons, including a great finale and
it was very
amazing
personal.
players.
That goes to just the power of role playing to bring people together.
Yeah.
Well, just in terms of
listeners, you
guys were very polite.
No, you're a very good storyteller, which is why you're a good, I guess, GM. And listeners, you can hire Jack to if you love that magic that we just heard.
It's like a World of Warcraft campaign. It's like you were telling a World of Warcraft story. All I could think of was like, wow, this is something like this sounds like an EverQuest adventure.
We always talk about on the show about world building. Oh, we love world building. It's like, I love everything you just said.
It's funny when you were mentioning like the emotion that you like at your table.
Yeah.
All I could think of was what Alan Moore said one time.
Sure.
The author Alan Moore, where he talks about how words and stories are actual magic, like because he's a magician, like a ceremonial wizard and that type of thing.
We can only hope to get close to
but he says that words affect people. That's real magic, is when you can tell a story that makes people actually feel things and change them as human beings. That is, in a sense, something real that's special. It's magical in itself.
Yeah.
So it's like when you tell that story, you changed people, you made an impression on their lives. They'll be thinking about it's not just your story, it's their story.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll carry that with them for the rest of their lives. So you've created something that's tangible, and in a sense, it's physical and it's real because it affected them.
Normally, this is where I'd do some sort of modesty, which is at least 50% true most of the time. But it is hard to deny when ultimately the most precious thing that we have is time, and they gave me 3.5 years of their time, and I think that says it all, really. But make no mistake, a story is no good if the characters are crap. so I was riffing off them, man, for sure.
No, especially because most people work, do the 9 to 5, and they don't have that artistic expression.
And I think it goes back to what you were saying before. People, people, they grow up, they get married, they have kids, and they work stressful jobs, and they don't have time for an outlet. And we've been talking a lot about different creative stuff tonight, like movies are an outlet, music's an outlet, rock music. You say metal music's an outlet, tabletop's an outlet. People just need more outlets, and they need to feel less.
Creativity.
Shame is the wrong word, right? But they need to embrace vulnerability that comes with creative outlets.
Yeah, there's this whole macho thing going on.
Yeah.
Like real men don't do this.
Yeah.
Matt Colville, who's one of the best pro GMs out there. If you want whatever I say to sound much more eloquent, you should go look him up. He said, and for the record, all of those hobbies that you just listed is awesome, but I'm going to slightly disagree with what you said about people, I don't think it's what you meant, but the implication was people kind of lose that creativity. I genuinely don't think that's true. But what I think tabletop helps you do, and with few exceptions, and you can think of them like painting and things like that, what tabletop allows you to do, whether you're a player or a GM, though certainly more for a GM, is it's one of the few hobbies out there where it's not consumption. Right? Movies, unless you're writing about them like you guys are, that's putting your own spin on it. That's a different story. That's an extra step that you are choosing to take. It's not inherent in the medium. Music, consumption. Movies, consumption. Tabletop is about making stuff. And I think that's where the real juice is. Once people understand that, I don't need to explain it to them. They just know.
Yeah.
They've made their own character for the first time. Made their own character.
Yeah.
Then all that stuff, all of those movies, they suddenly become useful tools. And then they go, oh, right, I could steal that bit. And go ahead, man. Hey, if anyone's listening to this and they want confirmation, it's like, oh, I'll never come up with an original story. It's all bullshit. It's all about what you steal from.
Yeah.
Make sure it's old enough. That's all. That's the only advice I've got.
Just change the name a little bit. My name's Duke Starwalker.
So
I think it's just I appreciate because like I was saying before, like we're a bunch of hacks and we like getting interesting people on because you can bring that out of someone who might not generally be an artist or be a creative or not have a creative outlet in their day-to-day life.
I like that phrase.
But you can sort of bring that out and let them play and let them imagine.
It's almost like shaman stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like a modern day.
I watched Hai Long the other day, so I know exactly what
it's
you
like
mean.
it's like modern day.
Have you guys heard of that group?
No.
I'll tell you about that in a minute. But yeah, go ahead.
It's trying to bring things out of people. It's like a modern day art. You know what I mean? Because and like let people get happy. They get excited when they fully understand role playing. Like you can see it. Like it's because with the actual plays and Critical Role, people get so excited about it now. But it's such an interesting time to be in tabletop.
It's also I don't know if I would attribute it just to Stranger Things, but it's not
nothing.
Well,
it's also rapidly.
We talked about
growing in the last
tabletops
few
a
years,
lot more popular.
There are people at my work who play tabletop, and you would never, by looking at them, you would never guess, right? Because they don't fit that old kind of stereotypical mold of the nerd.
They don't look like us.
Yeah,
Not you. I mean, like
people at work know I'm a massive nerd, right? I don't care what people think.
Yeah.
I love what I love.
I think it's going to be somewhat obvious from now on. I've literally got a Batman sleeve on my. On my
but
arm,
Batman's
guys,
cool though.
so.
Batman's been cool since like the 90s.
Batman, ever since the Dark Knight trilogy came out, the Dark Knight trilogy came out, like Batman is.
Yeah, he was a little bit uncool when they put nips on the bat suit.
That's true. Yeah.
Oh man.
But he came back.
Yeah, there was a moment.
They're getting artistically like reviewed now, reimagined, looked at in a new way.
But it's good. Like obviously, people at work, I don't. Like, I don't care what people think of me. People know I'm a massive nerd. Sure. I'm taking a week off to go to PAX. What's PAX?
That's the other
I'm going to be
is,
a nerd professionally for a weekend.
But that's like nerd culture, and it's becoming more mainstream and accepted and whatever.
Nerd culture is a dead term, in my opinion.
I would agree.
There's probably a better term, but
no. So I'm not shitting on your conflicts. What I mean is, what was nerdism back in the 70s? I'm asking. What was considered to be
you nude? You like
like playing D&D or
D&D.
Star Wars or
comics,
comic books,
all the things that are sick
Marvel
now.
stuff,
making
billions.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
So it's kind of mood.
That's what I'm saying. Is at this point now, it's like
it's ubiquitous.
It's more accepted. It's more accepted.
It's
quote
more
unquote.
accepted in mainstream pop culture.
Yeah,
and I think it's more accepted. The people who, maybe 20 years ago, they wouldn't have felt comfortable engaging with that too. Because So I think it is good. It's a good time.
Yeah. I read a book once. I want to say it was called Dalek, I Loved You, because I'm a big Doctor Who fan as well. And he wrote a funny anecdote about what it was like to be a fan in the 70s in Britain. Because everyone was a fan, but you couldn't find them. Because they were all hiding in their basements like everybody else. And yet it was popular enough that Tom Baker's on the Wheaties box. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like once you get to a certain age, like there was this level of shame which just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I call that a net positive, even though it's somewhat being exploited, but
like we talked to you about that during the PAX interview. Go watch it on YouTube if you haven't, listeners. But like
youtube.com/that's
tabletop has tripled in size in the last couple of years at PAX, and Chaosium Con's coming here next year. And
so the last one was really fun. I'm excited to see you guys there.
So like,
hopefully we'll get to go. Michael O'Brien, very, very nice man, told us to email him and he'll see what he can do. So God willing, we'll
talk.
I mean, I'll be honest,
guys,
we were going to pay to get
You were
in.
talking about actual play. What if we did it there? That'd be pretty sick.
We could. We'll talk to the radio to see if we can get the OB, the outside broadcasting equipment. We could possibly.
Could we set that? We'll talk about after.
We'll get ourselves excited about nothing. But there is potential if we run it past station committee
Yeah.
to do something really exciting,
Oh.
if we can get the tech available, we have the tech available.
Yeah.
We might need a training session with Alan for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to do something potentially broadcasting at the event.
I want to help out in any way I
Yeah,
can.
yeah.
It sounds
We'll
dope.
talk about
Well,
that.
well,
later.
that's something worth investigating
Yeah.
because it could be a station first.
But
For sure.
Callum mentioned shaman, and you
Yeah.
mentioned something.
Oh, yeah.
What was that?
Okay. So, Hailung is a...
the band, the
uh-huh.
the
They
from
performed yesterday.
the what was that game? Did they do the game that? What's that game?
Senua's
Senua's Saga.
Sacrifice 2.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, they did the soundtrack for that.
You saw them?
I did.
Was it a mind trip?
It's the closest thing that you'll probably get to shamanism in every form you can think of. Unfortunately, it was in a traditional theater, like with seats and only seats.
Yeah.
So you couldn't get up and dance. It is Viking reenactment, history amplified, and stories about the gods and
wow.
their own history. And what's really dope, I learned this from a fan. Such a nice crowd, probably the nicest fan group of people I've ever seen. They were all, I guarantee you, they were my people, they'd be your people too. They were LARPing, they were like, like there was like punks over there and goths over there and these people with hoods on and painted faces and like
I want to talk
belt
to these people.
daggers.
Yeah.
They were so cool, man. I can't remember what my point was, but long story short,
Shamanism.
Yeah. So, that's what they go out of their way, no matter what country they go to talk to the native people of that land, because they're telling stories from their part of the world, right? And so they talk to native people of whatever land they're in this case, Australia, and they talk to experts on the culture, and they will get cultural sensitivity stuff. And I'm like, oh, what does that mean? And the reason they do it, that there might be more to it because I'm relatively new to the live experience, but they took plants from the Australian bush, probably ones recommended by, the cultural expert.
Yeah.
And when I say shamanistic, I mean it. Like, it's literally a ritual where they have opening, closing ceremony.
And did they
I could
have,
smell
like-
eucalyptus, and they were brushing every member of the troop. They were standing in a circle.
So it was like a traditional indigenous ceremony.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't an indigenous ceremony. It was clearly their ritual that they
okay.
were blessing,
Yeah.
but from the land
So
that they were on.
It used like a native Australian cultural
Yeah.
context to the show. Yeah.
Exactly. And that was so fascinating to me. And then they
Very
did
respectful.
the show. Yeah, but like it kind of it's a logical leap. Not a logical
Yeah.
leap. It
Staying in the
makes
hippie
sense
tradition.
to you.
Yeah, staying
Yeah.
in the hippie tradition, you're using what you have at hand
Yeah,
and what's, I guess, used within
augments
historical
it, doesn't
context.
it?
But I'll tell you
Grounding
a funny
yourself
story
to
though.
the.
They have that they do all of these songs and they're like stories and about the gods and of history. And so they have like Vikings with spears and shields. All that shit is real. All of it, and it's sharp too, apparently. But the funny thing,
How do
and
they get it
you'll-
through
you'll-
customs?
That's the joke. They have an instrument that they were actually playing, and the really nice fan, like I said, the community's dope. She leans over to me and goes, "That's a femur." And they somehow got that through customs. They got this whole leg bone that they're playing on. Like,
What would you write on
it's so cool.
on the customs declaration form? You're like, what have I got? I got a femur bone.
Oh,
I got
They
some
explain
sword.
that they have to do a form.
It's just my
for-
double bass.
For everything natural, they had to do a form. Its own form.
Yeah.
And and she was funny about it. Maria is the name of the head priestess. Once you Google it, you'll see what I mean. She said, "Have you seen our show? Everything's made from wood or animal skin or something." So the whole show, that like all of the props have to have their own form. So I imagine after watching the show, they probably had to do about I'm gonna say 240 forms.
Jeez, I hope
Like-
they have they probably pay someone.
There's
to do
got
it
yeah. I mean, they'd have
professionally.
like
Yeah.
a crew who but that's
Yeah.
awesome.
the band document clerk. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a roadie except he's like an
Yeah.
accountant.
Yeah.
But it was honestly like go look them up when you go home. They're honestly
What are they called again?
Fascinating. Heilung, Heilung.
Can I ask you kind of a personal
Hey,
question?
hit me.
Are you an atheist?
Agnostic.
Okay. Was it so? There's an interesting phenomenon with specifically music, but like
Yeah.
all forms of art, where it's like people talk about the religious experience.
Yeah.
Did you have? Was it like being in such an? I don't want to use the word intimate, but like a
Yeah.
shamanistic kind of performance that's unlike most metal or folk bands. Was it like a spiritual / religious experience?
Yeah.
Element to that.
I can say that as a person who used to do choir, I performed at the St. Stephen's Cathedral every Sunday, and they paid me $200 a year in the money because I was like 12. There is a power of ritual.
Yeah.
Rich, and I learned this extensively in my theater studies. No matter what it is, if you choose to, if you direct, for lack of a better word, energy, and I hate that hippy dippy shit. but
No.
bear with me.
no,
I'm going to cut you off here.
You're in the right. You're in the right.
You're in the
room
wrong
for that.
studio. Right. So
We go off the deep
we're
end,
not
don't you worry.
superstitious. We're a little stitious.
No,
So-
you're cool. Now, so I think, like personally, what they mean by energy is intent and belief. I think what you believe is true, and ritual is a big part of that. Now you notice I've got Batman on my arm, right? To me, that is no different in the power of belief than like a lot of religious figures, because people attribute things to that character. The difference is I know he's not real. But so when I've lost my train of thought. I was talking about ritual energy. It was to do with
performing and like just being in that space and having that experience.
Was it like being religious? So yeah, I would say that, and I've had experiences before that felt quote unquote religious.
It's a clumsy word. I apologize.
But I will say I don't. For me, it's not important. Not that I think you are fishing with that question. I don't think it's important if the content is true.
No. I mean just the experience of being in the presence
Right.
of that music and then feeling that. Like for me, I was watching Interstellar for the first time in the cinema, and I had that experience where I was almost an out of body.
Cinema is a religious place. It's a ritualistic place. You even think about it. You even have your own sacrament.
The popcorn.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just fascinating to me, this idea that even atheists.
We have our traditions, don't we?
Yeah. Apart from Nathan, he doesn't eat it.
No, I don't need popcorn.
Oh,
You
well,
got
that's okay.
the Chuckies. What's your
Lately,
snack?
lately, last past year or so, nothing.
Yeah.
They were trying to be
You
good
can
boys.
still go to church and not eat of the holy bread. People will just stare at you.
I'm
I
just
like
fascinated
Maltesers.
by these things that
Maltesers
people
are nice.
feel, regardless of their background, right? Like you can be watching great art,
Yeah.
whether that's a band. Often it happens at music shows, but also in like big, incredible movies.
Yes.
These feelings that we get, and like I'm an agnostic as well.
Yeah.
But I can understand how if you were someone 1,000 years ago,
It's addictive.
who saw some great art and you
Yeah.
had this religious experience, like if you'd
It's
never
also-
seen. If
maybe
you'd never seen
maybe a
art
better word
before,
might be like transcendental.
yes.
Yeah.
If you'd never seen art before and you're a
Yeah.
peasant and you find your way into the Sistine Chapel,
Yeah.
like how does that make you feel?
Yeah, and I've been there, man, and there is something about a space, and I will say this when it comes to any kind of belief, regardless of what it is. Like, it doesn't matter if people believe it's true or like if it's like purely fictional, like the Batman thing. Belief and ritual have power.
We
As simple as that.
we are big believers in this studio of energy, and again,
not like charging your crystals in the sun type bullshit.
Okay.
but like putting positive energy out into the universe. Not existing in or not trying to
Yeah.
put out negative energy, and like it's when
I think I would subscribe to that as
It's
well.
it's
Not
hard
in the
to-
same words, but yeah.
without sounding batshit crazy, our listeners would know we've gone on some pretty deep dives on some of this subject in the past. But like, there is a power when you're religious or not of like, when we saw Ross Court Heart, for instance, and you've got people in the audience and they're telling their stories, and that's a very of personal.
Well, that's kind of what happened when Jack told his
Yeah.
story. It's like you're
like,
there was an energy to it. I don't know.
Like when someone else is putting out their emotions or their energy, and you're receiving it, there is a power there. And
like
the
a
same
connection, an unspoken connection
like-
that's not physical. You can definitely feel that from people, and
And
it's
like-
not just because like, oh, I'm looking at someone, so I'm looking at their feelings. There's like an aura about it when you're in a big group of
Yeah,
with
like-
a big group of people, and you're all feeling the same vibe.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
becomes
like we
larger
saw-
It's
than-
like it's like Jack said. It's
Yeah.
like the cinema is
Yeah,
like a
exactly.
like
There
the
is-
church is all these people looking at
Yeah.
the altar,
But
looking
I'm
at the
not
screen,
Sure, I'm not sure if it's
having the same experience.
I mean that can be explained as well. Like at the end of the day, like we do feed off energy. We're social creatures.
Yeah.
Right. So if someone's mad at you, you'll kind of know, won't
Yeah,
you? Like
yeah.
you know, if someone's pissed off, they might go, "I'm not pissed off."
yeah.
But remember, we're
But
mostly body language.
Yeah.
Right. So that I 100% agree with you. I guess I'm a little resistant to it simply because theater takes it a little too far. By that I mean, and you guys would have no business knowing this, so yeah. In warm-up rituals, certain ways,
They're very superstitious.
no, well, yes. That to me, that's just charming. I don't care. But if I'm forced to participate, then I get a little shirty. They're like, feel the energy coming up from the ground as you're like bent over. You know, your fingers spread out, and the concept is good. The language bothers me a little bit because like obviously it's shorthand, all that stuff. It's my boomer moment, you know what I mean? Like I'm a big if I had more time or inclination, I'd probably find a better word because I think language is important. What you're describing about, yeah, absolutely, people have an energy. I think that's perfect shorthand. I wouldn't know what to call it.
Yeah.
But I guess what it comes down to is passion. You can tell when someone's passionate,
Yeah.
whatever it is, and you can definitely feel when someone has experienced something collectively together. Many a time in the cinema, at the Highland concert, at other amazing concerts that I've been to. I mean, we were talking off air about what a big Kiss fan I am. Those shows, I wouldn't call them religious, but the way that they've made an entire 50-year career out of fan loyalty, because they didn't have that many number ones, my friends. That is because of that shared passion, and there is a ritual there too. And I think the best things do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I before we went live, I was telling Jack here about my favorite movie because we were talking about Kiss. Role models.
Role models.
Oh,
And he
yeah.
never
I thought
seen
you
it.
thought you were talking about Groundhog Day because you said that was your favorite movie.
No, my favorite movie changes, but
Yeah, yeah. I still have. We have to rewatch it and talk. We will rewatch it and talk about it on the show because I haven't seen Role Models in.
I've never
it's
seen
got live
Since it
action.
came
It's
out.
got live action role playing. It's
Wow.
got Sean William Scott. It's got Kiss.
Yeah,
It's
Get
got
it, Ronnie. His dick is the gun.
That's it.
Favorite movies for the other two of you then, or at least favorite movie today.
Oh,
Whatever comes to mind.
I always say first thing that comes to mind. I always say is Apocalypse Now. I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
the
you did
greatest
say that.
movie
Yeah.
ever made. I don't think we'll ever see anything else like it
sure.
ever.
Oh, right now, Darjeeling Limited.
Oh yeah.
Right now,
It's a good one.
Look, normally I would say Interstellar, but I flip between, and this is a bizarre coupling of
Yeah.
films. It flips between Interstellar and The Post.
Really? That's gonna be okay.
No, either or, because like I like the Washington Post. I know that's a dumb thing, but like there's just something about the Washington City and the paper, and just I love watching journalists work. And I love watching the printing press
Sure.
and the
Yeah.
drama behind it, the mystery element, the investigation.
Yeah.
I love those processy movies, the investigation films. And Spielberg's just he's a goat. The goat.
I need to change my answer.
Um,
Actually,
Hmm.
it's
No, you had your
right,
turn.
Right now, it's Zodiac.
Yeah.
I just watched the
yeah.
Netflix, the new Netflix show.
But yeah, basically Interstellar.
Yeah.
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 What about you?
Well, I've got. I really can't look. I'll for the purposes of this, because you guys took the punt and just went, oh yeah, here's a one. So the first thought I had was Mrs. Doubtfire.
It's a good one.
It's a childhood nostalgic one for me. But if you watch that movie back, don't get it twisted. I have personal reasons that it being my favorite film. So without trauma dumping, I don't talk to my family at all, and the scene at the end is extremely moving to me ever since I was young, where especially because Robin Williams has sadly passed away 10 years next year. He says there are all kinds of different families. You can hold it in your heart forever, and that he's essentially reassuring me through the screen, and he says, "You'll be all right.
Yeah.
Bye bye."
yeah,
I can't get through it.
yeah.
Robin Williams is like a religious figure almost in a way.
Yeah.
A father figure to so many.
Yeah.
That's an interesting movie too. They have never released them, have they? But there's so many alternate versions where he goes off the rails
just
and turns it into
outtaking.
like an R-rated movie.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Well, they
behind
let him get away with more in that film. And I will tell you, watch that film again and really watch Sally Field. What a performance. Because her job is to be the bad guy. Not really, but to be the obstacle.
Yeah.
She divorces Robin Williams. She keeps the kids from him. She is dating Pierce Brosnan. And
Can't blame
yet, at least for me, I never, ever blamed her.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, I'm not an incel, so I never understood
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Skylar White Breaking Bad
Yeah.
critique, right? So I guess it wasn't for me. But I challenge anyone, because you can see the grief
Yeah.
in her eyes
Yeah.
when she says, "This isn't working anymore."
Yeah.
You
It's just a
are
testament,
refusing to, and when you're young, when I was young and I'm watching the movie, I'm going, I didn't blame her or anything, because it was like such a heavy thing. It was just too much for me to understand at the time. But if I was going to think about it, you asked my young self, I would have gone, oh, give Robin another chance. But here's the thing, it's probably the 1200th chance.
Yeah.
It's this thing that he
Yeah.
keeps doing and refusing to take responsibility, and letting her be the bad guy, being the parent, in other words. And when she's finally says, "I want a divorce," she doesn't say it angrily. She says it with such pain, because she still loves Daniel, Robin Williams' character. And she doesn't want to do it to her kids. She doesn't want to go through the process of a divorce. And she even dates a much hotter man. It could have been done so poorly by another actress, where you're just like, oh, screw that bitch.
Yeah.
But she just nails that thing so well. And there's another scene where the makeup comes off, where she goes, the whole time. And she no joke, watch that scene. She goes, boop, boop, boop. It's like a arrhythmia hospital machine.
Yeah.
Up, down. She goes from shocked to disbelief to
Anger.
oh my god, to absolute anger in 10 seconds. She is marvelous.
It's-
in anything she does.
It's-
Sally Field, great actress.
It's hard
Underrated.
it's hard to write a movie like that where you have that kind of, as you said, the
Well-
obstacle. She's not a villain. She's
No.
Robin Williams' obstacle.
I think that's one of
And,
the
like,
reasons it's
make everyone looks okay in the movie. There's not.
That's one of the reasons it's such a great movie, because it's not, it doesn't have this Hollywood ending where it's like, oh well, everything's
Yeah.
fine at the end, and they get back
Yeah.
together, and
They
it doesn't
wanted
have,
that.
and it doesn't
They wanted
have
to change it to that.
Man,
Yeah.
if that came out today, it'd just be everyone online would talk about the politics of the film,
Right.
and
Yeah.
Thank God it came
I
out.
think
When it's,
a lot of those classic 90s comedies is like, not only are they hilarious, but they also have a heart to them.
Well,
Yeah.
And a lot of movies now, and especially comedies, are missing that. I
One of the
think.
movies
Yeah.
I'm most excited to watch on the 1st of December, when I can watch Christmas movies legally.
we take
That's
it
a good question.
Man, we take it
Christmas
serious.
movie next time.
We take it seriously here from October.
October,
Personally,
only horror movies.
We only watched horror movies.
Good boys.
November, I'm going to watch comfort films.
Good.
Yeah, November's the bounce back from October.
Just rocking yourself.
Yeah.
I watched the James and me watched the coffee table. We deserve a break.
Traumatized, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm only. I was looking at my Blu-rays and I'm like, I was like taking out the war movies, the action movies, anything with any sort of violence or excitement. I was just like, I'm just gonna watch like Studio
I'm watching When
Ghibli or
Harry
something.
Met Sally on repeat for the
Yeah.
next 6
That
days.
was one
Yeah.
of the things that went through my head as like one of my favorite.
That's
films
one of my
too.
favorites.
That's
Yeah.
Nora F. Man, they don't make them like her anymore.
James went to Europe specifically to buy that on 4K.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, technically no, but technically yes. Yeah. So they only
We're gonna say
released
no
it in
for
Germany.
sure.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
One of the movies I'm looking forward very much, in very similar, in some ways to Mrs. Doubtfire, is the Santa Claus, the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, there's no
Yeah.
real villain. The character has
No.
a transformation.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
it's about keeping the family together in an amicable way as they can, right?
Yeah.
When,
Yeah, and
your
the-
ex-husband is going insane.
Yeah,
or turning
and the
into a
ex-wife
mythological figure.
Isn't the bad guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's
No,
yeah.
she's quite reasonable considering he's clearly having an episode.
Yeah.
So I'm Santa Claus. Okay, mate.
It's
Yeah.
technically a
Right, we need
is that
to-
a
we
body
need to go
horror
there.
movie? Have we talked about this?
I'd like to see the Cronenberg.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Cronenberg.
like child's first body horror film.
Yeah. It's the gateway.
But that's like 1st of December. I'm going to put on the Santa Claus.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it gives me the same kind of vibes as Mrs. Doubtfire.
Sure.
Kind of,
Yeah, it's got similar.
and then I'll ignore the sequels. But
second one has
second
its
one was
moments, I
okay.
think. Third one I don't think I ever
and
saw.
then they released
The
a TV show.
Yeah, I don't think.
know.
Yeah, no, anyway. I think we're running out of time, but Jack, before you
Yeah.
mentioned you used to do some like actual movie criticism, like
Oh, yeah.
written stuff.
I'm not gonna name it because I
No,
honestly
you
don't
don't
remember
have
the website. And I don't think we ended on the best of terms. Yeah, I mean, I love critiquing stuff. I've done it on and off on YouTube and all sorts of things. I remember. I'm trying to think of honestly, I was all the films I went to reviewed were pretty average. I remember there was. I'm trying to remember. It was like a Zac Efron film. I can't remember anything, but I did review this one, so I got a free ticket to Are We Officially Dating? I don't remember a damn thing. But yeah, was there a specific question in there? Or
No, it was
No,
just,
good job. We're only just getting into free tickets now.
The problem
So you
for
must have
Whoa.
been pretty good.
The problem for us is we all work for a living, like no one gets paid, and then we found ourselves in a weird. We're not paid monetarily. We're paid in experiences.
And good vibes.
Yeah. We started this as a hobby.
You'll get there. You'll get there.
We started this as a hobby and to do something as friends. That wasn't our original intention. But we find ourselves in the position now. We're all work, and now we're getting these opportunities to go see movies. Some movies before they come out, and they're like, "Oh, the session's on a Wednesday at 6 p.m."
Yeah. Oh, that happened all the time. Yeah.
And we're just like, well, I can't-
Tuesday at 11.
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
I work. No, like
Yeah.
I can't. I wish I could, but
It's hard to juggle.
it's hard to juggle. Kind of,
For sure.
I
We
guess.
do what we
Yeah,
can.
We do what we can.
Yeah,
But
but I mean, the last year or two we've been sort of making some strides, and
we've only been putting ourselves out there for the last 14, 15 months. So we've done pretty
Yeah.
well so far.
yeah,
100%.
getting our foot indoors and meeting interesting people like yourself. So
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Peg.
I'll be back if you'll have me. This was fun.
definitely, yeah.
Anytime.
So I guess thanks for coming. Where can people find you?
Okay, so you can find me on all the social media garbage at Jack Squarepeg. That's JackSquarepeg. I noticed, by the way, in the previous video that I spelled it wrong, in fact.
I noticed that too.
Yeah, what a fucking moron.
At the time, because I was listening and I'm like, no, you got it right, and then you said, I think that's right, and I'm like, yeah. I was like, and then I rewatched it. I'm like, no, you got it
Clarify
wrong.
with you.
It was
let me
PAX,
down.
like our brain is liquid.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
yeah. Just try to
And
survive.
if you're wanting to hire me as a GM, you can find me at www.dungeonmasterforhire.com.au. We are doing a huge 40th birthday in 2 or 3 weeks, where we need to have like a working script. It's really quite involved. This guy's turning 40. He wants like the whole Megillah. We're starting with like a tavern scenario where they get like little boosters for when they do traditional play. Then we're organizing like a chessboard sequence, like kind of like the Harry Potter first film, where they transition into like a devil's game show, and that'll be the end bit where everyone's eating dessert and at the tables, and then it's just interactive theater masquerading as D&D. It's like,
That's
come on
cool.
down and this table, and then they're all competing against each other
That's
to see
it.
who
That'll
gets
be
the
awesome.
MacGuffin. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're excited about that. It should be fun, and it'll be lots of photos and recordings taken, hopefully, because it's hard to describe what you do for a living sometimes.
Is any of that stuff on your YouTube? Like,
What I just described.
yeah, sort of, not that exactly, but
Yeah.
you know, some of your sessions that you.
Yeah, dude. So I run, as I said, Trouble Over Yonder, which is my cowboy pulp Cthulhu show.
Yep.
That's the closest that it gets to what we were talking about, where it's like a radio episode where I try and put in sound effects and things like that. I'm also doing another one called Time to Harvest, and I do one-shots all the time. I ran a friend of mine's adventure where it was called Chaos in the, I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, Chiapas, I think, which was a pulp adventure. Basically, think Brendan Fraser's The Mummy.
Nice.
Indiana Jonesy, Uncharted
Yeah.
video game series, just action sequence after action sequence. Like at one point, to catch one who was falling from the Mexican temple falling down, this person was straddling 2 cars with their arms up like this, you know. So it was a whole thing. Yeah. So yeah,
That's
you can
awesome.
check all that out. Check all that out there. I know how to talk.
Excellent. You can find the Tuesday Review on all the social media garbage at Tuesday Review AU.
Don't
That's
steal that. It's mine.
Facebook, Threads,
No, steal that.
Instagram, Twitter, Newsmast, Blue Sky, and YouTube at Tuesday Review AU.
Mhm.
We're also on
YouTube.
Letterboxd. And
Oh.
YouTube. I said and YouTube.
Oh, did you say it?
Yes, and
Yeah.
YouTube. I was in with Ad YouTube.
Check out our interview with Jack at PAX on YouTube.
One
I
of
think.
our highest PAX performing videos too. The most
I
liked.
noticed that. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
And,
Yeah. See, you're
That's it.
you're a draw. You're a star. You got to put those sunglasses on
And
back
one-
on.
And one,
do it.
and one YouTube complaint which I fixed.
I did know.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
To be fair,
No,
call
good.
out.
Yeah, good.
Good
That
call
was a criticism as we
yeah,
discussed. Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
constructive.
Yeah.
We're also on Letterboxd. I'm
Yes.
Nathan B _90.
I am channeldrifter.
Are you on Letterboxd, Jack?
I should be, apparently.
Yeah, get on there.
But, get on it.
I'm Callum Tuesday.
We'll be back next week with more.
R.I.P. Greg. And
Rest in peace, Greg.
Is that the name of this episode? Rest in peace, Greg.
oh no, I don't know if we have to ask Jack for permission.
Give them the time code. Give the audience the time code so they can skip. Jesus Christ, that's a long story.
He'd have to text his
Nah, they don't care.
the crew.
I've
be
been,
like,
I've been
is
talking.
it-
I've been talking about them for years.
Okay.
I didn't say he was a shit role player, did I? So,
Yeah.
no, and they are. No, if they don't like it, they shouldn't have. Bugger 'em. They'll live.
We'll be
They're
back
my friends. They'll live.
We will be back next. Thanks for listening, everyone. Adios, cousins.